Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 293. Without any delay, start explanation. In a sense, the life seed was considered to be a part of the Lord of the Plain. Moreover, his cultivation base was apparently advancing at a tremendous pace after he broke through to 7 rings. Additionally, he had also acquired a piece of metal water harmonizer from his grand teacher. Yes. It seemed like my luck is truly getting better and my cultivation rate is accelerating too. I can even smoothly have a breakthrough in my cultivation of the body sect's innate secret technique. Do all these benefits come from being chosen by the plane? You should be able to figure this out properly. This is also the reason why the Tang sect chose to make you its sect master, said Long Yue. Tang Wulin spoke, Your Excellency, I agree to take on the responsibility. He had considered for a moment and then decided to speak frankly. Long Yue spoke, It's good that you've agreed. I'm telling you this not because I'm trying to inform you that the Tang sect is using you, but I wish to let you know that we intend to do the same. From this day onward, you're not only the leader of the Tang sect but also the leader of Shrek Academy's new generation. We will support you at all costs. Huh? Tang Wulin's mind could not react to the situation in that instant as he looked at the old title d'allure before himself. Long Yue smiled. A mighty movement is bound to need a mighty leader's guidance. I'm already old. Could it be that you still count on an elderly woman over 200 years old to do this? I may be able to bring some victories, but I can't give hope for Shrek's future. However, you can. Tang Wulin was feeling slightly bewildered. The sudden turn of events he went through at the Tang sect today was a little too much for him. We are going to assist you as you advance. I'm telling you all this for another purpose, and that is so you'll understand the path that you're going to embark on next. You must certainly comply with the plane's own requirements in order for you to perform smoothly. Otherwise, even if you are the plane's chosen one, you could still possibly end up being abandoned in the end. Yes, answered Tang Wulin. All right. It's time to go back. Send Wu Zhongkong and the rest here. Although Tang Wulin still felt dizzy when he left the Tang sect, it did not stop him from avoiding any kind of detection on the outside, and he distanced himself using the identity of a normal person before vanishing from the watchful eyes of his followers. Nevertheless, he was still feeling as if he was in a dreamlike state. Within a few short hours, he had become the Tang sect master and the new leader of Shrek Academy. Even though these two great organizations were far from what they had been in their glory days, he was only 21 years old. In history, no one had ever taken both tasks upon themselves. Even the only two men capable of achieving godhood, as in the Tang sect's founding father Tang San and the Spirit Pagoda's founder, the Holy Angel YueZhengyu, were incapable of doing this. On the other hand, he had managed to do so in a day. How unbelievable was this? Yet, the reality was right before his eyes. Then, he came to the Sea God Lake's shelter and found Wu Zhongkong to inform him about the news that the Light Dark d'allure and Inner Court disciples were still alive. Wu Zhongkong was just as surprised as he had been. However, after careful consideration, he did not send the over 200 students with Tang Wulin to the Tang sect, but he instead went with Tang Wulin alone. Elder Long. I don't think that now is a suitable time for everyone to gather together, said Wu Zhongkong straightforwardly to Long Yue after saluting her with respect. Long Yue asked, Why? Wu Zhongkong spoke, Your earlier concerns were correct. Even though over 200 students are willing to do anything for the academy after receiving its kindness, they are still too young and inexperienced. Thus, I think that they should elevate and train themselves one step further so they can become the backbone of the academy in the future. As a result, I think that the training proposed by Tang Wulin is necessary. They will only be considered mature after passing the tests on Demon Island and are qualified to know the secrets here. Long Yue pondered before she spoke, That makes sense as well. Then, we shall do as you've said. It's good to separate into two sides to share the risk. In case there are any changes, at least there's still hope. While Wu Zhongkong was discussing with Long Yue, Tang Wulin was chatting with his senior disciple brother Lan Muzi from the Inner Court. Lan Muzi told him how the Inner Court students survived on that day. The fellow elders from the Sea God's Pavilion did all they could to withstand the arrival of the godkiller rank fixed soul ammunition so the students could stand a chance of surviving. Just like the outer court disciples, the group of Sea God's Pavilion elders allowed them to live. There was no shelter in the inner court, but there was a peculiar semiplanar teleportation array. It was launched just in time to teleport the group of people away. On the other hand, the light dark dolor was in the peripheral area of the explosion, so she relied on her cultivation base to withstand the blast. Wounded, she fled into the distance. The group sighed heavily when recalling everything that had happened all that time ago. Long Yeyue and Wu Zhongkong walked out from the room. Her lips made a humming sound as she said something to the Holy Spirit Dolor, who was giving directions to two recovery-type soul masters on one side of the Great Hall. The Holy Spirit Dolor Yoli arrived by her side. The numerous inner court disciples hastily stood up and stood near her respectfully upon seeing Long Yeyue's arrival. Long Yeyue spoke with a deep voice, "I would like to announce that from now on, Shrek Academy shall be rebuilt. Wu Zhongkong shall be acting as the outer court dean and I'll be acting as the inner court dean. Yoli shall act as the Sea God's Pavilion vice pavilion master. Tang Wulin, Wu Zhongkong, Lan Muzi, Tang Yinmeng and the remaining 6 people of the Shrek 7 monsters shall become the elders of Sea God's Pavilion." All at once, the crowd's expressions became excited upon hearing Long Yeyue's words. They clenched their fists tightly. "Yes, Pavilion Master," said the group in unison. "No," Long Yeyue waved her hand. "I'm still the Vice Pavilion Master. Henceforth, the position of the Sea God's Pavilion Master shall be passed down to the leader of the Shrek 7 monsters, Tang Wulin." Other than Tang Wulin, who was already aware of this, the rest were greatly startled. Even Wu Zhongkong had a shocked look in his eyes. Tang Wulin as the Sea God's Pavilion Master? He was only 21 years old. Even if this was decided so the future would be more hopeful, it seemed like either Wu Zhongkong or Lan Muzi were more suitable than he, judging by their resources and plethora of abilities. At once, the group of inner court disciples was looking at Tang Wulin slightly differently. They were shocked, as well as rather confused. Even if Tang Wulin was the leader of the current generation's Shrek 7 monsters, he was still too young. Nevertheless, Long Yeyue was so domineering, who had the audacity to refute her words. Yoli slowly walked to the front of Tang Wulin. There was a flash of light in her hand as she conjured a spear, shimmering with incandescent color. It was the Atlas Divine Spear left behind by the Atlas Dolor Yunming before the fusion of his essence, energy, spirit into his martial soul caused him to expire. "Wulin, this was left behind by Yunming. You also wield a spear, so I'm giving it to you. I hope that you can follow his example of martyrdom so that Shrek can regain its glory once again." Immediately, Tang Wulin felt a mix of emotions in his heart upon seeing the spear in the Holy Spirit Dolor's hand. The Atlas Divine Spear emitted incandescent radiance all over while its body looked transparent. It was unlike the Golden Dragon Spear with sharp blades on both ends, as it had only one spearhead. However, the spearhead was especially long, almost 1/3 of the Atlas Divine Spear's total length. There was a pulsating glow on the sharp spearhead. The word Atlas was carved crudely on the shaft that connected the spearhead. With his spiritual power perception, Tang Wulin could sense a gush of boundless and terrifying spear's consciousness. No, more accurately, it should be called the conception of the spear's essence. Tang Wulin had just learned the fundamentals of his spear techniques the last time he saw the Atlas Divine Spear. He did not have profound feelings for it, but at this very moment, he had a completely different sensation despite just looking at the Divine Spear. "Your Excellency," Tang Wulin's voice sounded as if he was trembling. A warm smile appeared on Yoli's face. Even though her eyes had lost their prior light, at this very moment, her smile remained as gentle as before. "You can address me as Grand Teacher. Inheriting his Atlas Divine Spear signifies that I'm taking you as my disciple on his behalf. The spear contains his entire legacy." Yoli lifted the Atlas Divine Spear and presented it before Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin gripped the spear shaft as a multitude of feelings surged in his heart. He knelt on the floor and lifted the Atlas Divine Spear in his hands high up into the air. "I, Tang Wulin, am pleased to formally acknowledge you as Grand Teacher." As he spoke, He lifted the Atlas Divine Spear and gave 3 kowtows to Yoli. Yoli's eyes had long since run out of tears and there was only gratitude left. I'll certainly do my best to see the arrival of that day. I believe that you'll certainly show me the brilliance that I saw in him back in the beginning at the very moment Shrek is rebuilt. The most painful moment in Yun Min's lifetime was when the Academy was destroyed, but I have never thought that he failed as the Sea God's Pavilion Master. I'll always be proud of him. Don't disappoint the Atlas Spear. I hope that it will help you to become that Atlas Jade Pillar that holds up the heavens and supports Shrek once again. Yes, Grand Teacher. I'll certainly do my best not to disappoint the teacher's Atlas Divine Spear. Yun Ming was Nao's teacher once. From this moment onward, he was Tang Wulin's teacher too. Tang Wulin stood up once again with his hands holding the Atlas Divine Spear. Lan Muzi walked in front of him with a smile on his face. He took the initiative to speak, "Pleased to meet you, Pavilion Master." It was as though the rest of the inner court disciples were being awakened from a dream. They saluted Tang Wulin respectfully in unison. "Pleased to meet you, Pavilion Master." Yes, from the moment Tang Wulin received the spear, he was already the new generation Sea God's Pavilion Master of Shrek Academy. He was the representative of Shrek's true leader. Long Yue smiled and nodded at Tang Wulin. "From this day onward, you're the rightful person. I have something for you as well." As she was speaking, she arrived before Tang Wulin and stretched out her hands to pass him something. It was a translucent, diamond-shaped crystal. It was blue in color and crystal clear as if there were waves of water rippling inside. "What's this?" Tang Wulin's eyes were almost instantly attracted to the diamond-shaped crystal. It felt as if there was a great pull coming from inside of it. His vision had just managed to focus when he felt that his spiritual power, which had been able to sense the entire world, was attracted by the crystal and had completely fused into it in a split second. Everything in the surroundings became quiet. To his astonishment, Tang Wulin found himself inside a sky-blue world. The sky-blue hue color was boundless. A fish appeared to be a translucent blue color swam past his body. It was as if the entire world was filled with endless life energy. The sensation was simply amazing. His mind felt completely at ease, as his entire person basked in the thick life source. The entire process seemed to last for a very long time, but it also felt like it appeared for only a split second. When Tang Wulin returned to the real world once again in a daze, he remained transfixed by the crystal shimmering with otherworldly light in the light dark dolor Long Yue's hand. Tang Wulin raised his head to look at the others. It was as if everybody else had the same feeling as he. Everyone was feeling amazed by the magnificence of this diamond-shaped crystal. It's called the Boundless Universe. It has always been the rare treasure that dominated Sea God's Pavilion and the Academy. The history of its existence goes way back to 20,000 years ago. It came from the first sect master of the Tang sect, the first leader of the first generation of the Shrek 7 monsters of Shrek Academy, the Thousand Hands Dolor Tang San. There's no way for us to look back on how Tang San acquired the Boundless Universe so many ages ago. We can only tell that the Boundless Universe played a decisive role in his path to godhood. In our academy, only limit dolor rank powerhouses with adequate experience are qualified to experience its mysteries. Through it, one can seek the first step of the path that leads to the divine realm. The Boundless Universe crystal is normally housed in the Sea God's Pavilion. On the day of the catastrophe, the Pavilion Master passed it to me, so that I could act according to the circumstances. Judging by age, I was supposed to be the final person that guarded Shrek at the time. However, he told me that he was duty-bound as the Pavilion Master. Thus, he allowed me, the old woman, to live. Today, I'll be passing the Boundless Universe crystal to you on his behalf. I hope that you will look to the example he set, guarding every living thing in Shrek and protect the glory of Shrek over thousands of years just like every past Sea God's Pavilion Master. Yes? With solemn eyes, Tang Wulin received the Boundless Universe crystal with the utmost respect. The Boundless Universe crystal felt icy cold, but it had a soft texture. It felt extremely peculiar in his hands, as if it was not solid but more like a piece of jelly. Long Yue spoke in a deep voice. Next, we shall resume the original plan. Zhongkong, do send over the first batch of students to the Demon Island personally. We've already fixed the candidate name list earlier. Wulin, don't go anywhere for the next 3 months. Stay and cultivate in the Tang sect and head to Star Luo and Do Spirit 3 months later. Yes? Tang Wulin nodded in agreement. Long Yue's expression suddenly dimmed. She spoke in somber tones. Wulin, you're already the Sea God's Pavilion Master of Shrek Academy right now. You are the true leader of the academy and also the current sect master of the Tang sects, so you must pay more attention to your identity. No matter where you are representing the Tang sect and Shrek Academy. You must never assume the attitude in the past anymore when you're facing me, Zongxin or Cao Deji. The Tang sect and Shrek Academy need your aura as a leader, and not the humility of a student or a Tang sect disciple. Tang Wulin was stunned for a moment. He nodded with a bitter smile. Frankly, these two identities came so suddenly and unexpectedly for him that he was still not quite accustomed to them. Long Yue's serious gaze vanished. All right, then we shall resume getting back to our first plan. The specific affairs will still be decided upon by the Sea Gods Pavilion Committee. Other than Tang Wulin, the group of Shrek Academy members bowed to Long Yue in unison. Tang Wulin was assigned to a single room. His new status was completely different, so, naturally, his room was the best available. His chambers of over 200 square meters had its own study, bathroom, cultivation room, and even a special forging room. Every need of his was fulfilled. Tang Wulin returned to the room and headed straight for the meditation room. By the time he sat cross-legged, he was still feeling as if he was in a dream world. Was it true that he had already become the leader of both the Tang sect and Shrek Academy? He could even say he was the first person in history ever to be assigned such an identity. Even the two greatest legends of the Tang sect, the Thousand Hands Dolor Tang San and the Holy Ice Dolor Huiyuhao, had never achieved such a feat before. He was only just past 20 years old after all. It was utterly impossible for him to not feel proud of himself. The sense of pride aside, he had an even more intense sense of responsibility. Originally, he had assumed that the light dark Dolor Long Yue still being alive would slightly lighten the burden placed on his shoulders. There was also Teacher Wu. They were capable of bearing the heavy task of rebuilding Shrek Academy, yet it seemed like the heaviest load remained his own. This showed that Elder Long and Teacher Wu valued him very highly, but at the same time it also signified that he was going to bear an even greater burden. However, he was in a vastly different mood compared to before. At least, he did not feel lonely anymore. Shrek Academy had not been completely destroyed, and its foundations remained within so many of the inner and outer court's outstanding students. In the foreseeable future, they would certainly restore Shrek's culture and heritage to what it had been when they were all fully developed. At this point, Tang Wulin could not help feeling rather excited. He was even just about ready to let out a great roar into the sky. Ever since he headed to the Blood God Army back then, he had always been in an extremely depressed and even oppressed mood. How could he not feel depressed when the academy was destroyed and he lost his family? How could those incidents not leave him feeling agonized? Now, he could finally see a gleam of hope. At least, everything was developing in a good direction. Everything was still possible with the Tang sect's culture and heritage, and also the seed left behind by Shrek. He had even wished that he could achieve more. The act of rebuilding Shrek was definitely not his final goal. After all, the continent remained in the federal government's control. In the future, he would need to not only rebuild Shrek if it wished to stand aloof once again, but also acquire the entire Federation's support. Tang Wulin and his companions would need to confront countless enemies in the future. The Holy Spirit cult occupied the foremost position, followed by the great forces that supported Hawk faction, and there was also the Spirit Pagoda that could possibly be the hardest to manage, for the threat of their presence was even bigger than the Holy Spirit cult. There were countless dark forces hiding in dark other than that, and also the great troublemaker, Federation's military. Thus, Amorous Dolor and the rest thought of joining forces with the two great empires of Do Spirit and Star Luo to stop this war. A terrifying image involuntarily emerged on his mind. It was the scene when he was confronted by the Abyssal Sage King back then. He could clearly sense the Abyssal Sage King's boundless killing intent towards him. At present, they had defeated the Abyssal Tide and the seal had been strengthened once again, but was this effort truly capable of stopping the Abyssal Plane's next attempt? Tang Wulin did not know that, and he could even tell that no one could truly give an accurate answer to it. However, if the Abyssal Plane was willing to do everything no matter the cost, perhaps the Abyssal Plane could possibly launch the next Abyssal Tide at any time. Thus, the Abyssal Plane was another formidable enemy that he would need to confront. As the candidate chosen by the plane, he would have to be the first to bear the immense stress. In fact, the Abyssal Plane could possibly be the greatest enemy that he had to confront. Hence, the most important matter for him now was to strengthen himself. For the past 3 months, Tang Wulin could clearly sense the swift speed at which his cultivation base was elevating. During the 3 months-long closed-door cultivation, he spent the first month doing the most important task of tidying up the gains he acquired from cultivating in Blood God Army, especially infusing the understanding he had from the battle with Abyssal Sage King into his abilities through the comprehension of his spiritual power. Then, he cultivated at full pace. He had not luckily defeated Wu Zhongkong in the battle. This was the result of him settling down with his gains while expressing his true abilities at the same time. He had also relied on the amplification provided by Golden Dragon Spear and Golden Dragon King bloodline. Even though he only had a 7-ringed cultivation base, his overall fighting capacity at present was already no inferior to an ordinary title d'honneur rank powerhouse. Of course, this was when both parties were not using their battle armors. In reality, Tang Wulin was utterly incapable of using his battle armor right now. His 3-word battle armor's metal prototype was already completed, but he had yet to carry out the engravement of the core circuit. His soul power cultivation base was now already at rank 73. He had elevated himself by 2 ranks within the short period of 3 months. It was something simply unbelievable for someone with 7-ringed cultivation base. Moreover, Tang Wulin could sense that his cultivation speed was still increasing. Judging by the current situation, it would take him 1 year at most before he had the confidence to achieve the 8-ringed Soul d'honneur rank, and it would take 3 years at most for him to become a title d'honneur. He was but 24 years old by then. A 24-year-old title d'honneur was seen very rarely even in the history of Shrek Academy. Tang Wulin had already decided that he would simultaneously attempt to break the Golden Dragon King's 12th layer seal when he was breaking through to Soul d'honneur realm. According to the previous course, he was going to acquire his 6th Golden Soul Ring. The Golden Dragon Blast brought forth by his 5th Golden Soul Ring had elevated almost all his abilities. Thus, the ability brought by the 6th Soul Ring could only be more terrifying. On the other hand, his body's strength and endurance after becoming a title d'honneur would allow him to begin considering the making of 4-word battle armor. Tang Wulin had the confidence that he would be able to confront any powerhouse in today's world after he became a 4-word battle armor master. He followed very clear planning during his cultivation process. Ever since he successfully became a soul sage, he could sense that he had already entered a different level and he could truly be considered a powerhouse from that moment onwards. A faint smile emerged on Tang Wulin's face. He sat cross-legged in preparation to begin cultivating. The soul communicator wrapped around his wrist rang all of a sudden. Tang Wulin raised his hand and took a glance. His gaze changed and he appeared a little excited. He picked up the soul communicator and heard a familiar voice echoing from the other end of the communication. "Where are you?" "All right, wait for me." Tang Wulin had only spoken these brief words before he quickly got up and scurried out of the room. Yes, scurried was the best way to describe the way he moved. Tang Sect headquarters had almost spread over the entire Heaven Do City's underground world. As a result, exits were accessible in all directions. A few minutes later, Tang Wulin appeared on the streets of Heaven Do City. Due to his excitement, he had yet to disguise his appearance. His face was covered by a face mask and a cap covered his head. He concealed his appearance as much as possible. He squinted his eyes and spread out his spiritual power imperceptibly towards the surroundings. At his spiritual power level, anyone could not possibly detect his spiritual power unless it was another spirit domain rank powerhouse. Moreover, he had no time to be concerned about that in front of the excitement he was feeling right now. After all, it was not a big problem. A middle-aged man dressed in common attire was about to walk into the biggest auction in the Heaven-Do city when he stopped. There was nothing extraordinary about the middle-aged man, but there was one thing he had that was similar to Tang Wulin. He too had a face mask on his face, but there was no cap on his head. Another person followed him by his side. If Tang Wulin were to see her at this moment, he would certainly become even more excited. His excitement would be beyond comparison. She was wearing a face mask too that covered her facial features. However, she had a head full of gorgeous silver hair and a pair of enticing purple eyes. Pretty impressive spiritual power. The middle-aged man muttered to himself. "Enea, can you feel that?" he asked the woman by his side. The silver-haired purple-eyed Enea shook her head but did not speak. The middle-aged man squinted his eyes. "Your spiritual power cultivation is almost at the edge of spirit domain realm. There's no need to rush it. You'll feel it naturally once you've made a breakthrough to the limit." Pagoda Master, so you're saying that there was a powerhouse with spirit domain realm who unleashed his spiritual power just now? Yuena's voice sounded as pleasant as before, but it did not contain any spiritual fluctuation at all. It seems like the person is looking for something and has no intention to fight. Let's enter. Heaven-Do City is supposed to be a place where talented people still stay in secretion. Had we not been trying to get that item for you today, I would have liked to look at the mighty individual there. He led the way and walked towards the inside of the auction. Upon saying that, Yuena stopped walking. She turned around and looked toward the sky behind her with a complicated expression that flashed past her eyes for a moment. She clenched her fists subconsciously. The impulsiveness that crossed her eyes vanished as soon as it appeared. Found it. Tang Wulin's spiritual power retracted abruptly. He walked ahead on the street in a speed that appeared slow but was still swift. After a few rounds of detours, he found a familiar silhouette. Tang Wulin's smile grew wider during that very moment when he saw the person. He walked towards him in great strides. On the other hand, the person seemed to have felt his presence as well. The person suddenly turned around with his gaze fixated on Tang Wulin's body. This person was slightly different than Tang Wulin. He was not wearing a face mask. He had an ordinary face with a tall figure and his head full of golden hair shimmering with golden light under the sunlight. His lips cracked into a cunning yet enticing smile as he walked towards Tang Wulin. Soon, both of them were standing facing one another. Tang Wulin suddenly stretched out his hand and slapped toward the person's chest. The golden-haired male similarly stretched out his hand. Their right hands met each other in the air and clapped aloud. Then, they tightly grabbed one another's hand. Tang Wulin strenuously pulled once. There was no doubt that the disparity between Tang Wulin's strength and the golden-haired man's was still very huge. Tang Wulin bumped against the person's chest with his shoulder. However, in the next moment, they laughed aloud in unison. "Welcome back." Tang Wulin shook his hand. "Aren't we acting a little too passionate?" "Fortunately, my girl Xiaoyan is not here," the golden-haired man said while chuckling. Tang Wulin spoke. "Oh right, where's Xiaoyan? Why isn't she here with you? I haven't had the time to ask all of you." The golden-haired man was without a doubt YueZhengyu in disguise. He smiled. "She has her own path to take. She didn't even tell me where she was going when she left, but I can roughly make a guess. Don't worry, I've already contacted her. She will be arriving in another day or two. Big brother, even though you're the champion in Federal Star Do Battle Network Challenge, all of us have advanced our abilities too. Don't you be defeated by us." Tang Wulin rolled his eyes at him. "Both of you should try and fight me in pair." YueZhengyu's eyes glowed. "You said that. Don't cry when you get defeated." Tang Wulin looked at him with astonishment. "It seems like you're full of confidence. I suppose you've made a breakthrough to 7 rings." YueZhengyu immediately showed a proud expression. "Is it that impressive?" "It's nothing much." Tang Wulin said, "Let's go. This is not the place for a discussion." Upon saying that, he released his grasp on YueZhengyu's hand as they walked ahead. YueZhengyu occasionally looked at the scenery on both sides of the street. It feels really good to be back. What a waste that this is not Shrek City anymore. His expression dimmed a little as he was speaking the final sentence. Tang Wulin was not the only person with profound emotions towards Shrek Academy. In reality, they had cultivated in Shrek Academy for 3 more years than Tang Wulin back then, so they were feeling even more reluctant than Tang Wulin to part with the academy. Otherwise, he would not have been cultivating with such efforts during this period of time. Oh, I'm already a colonel. I've been promoted out of my capability in the Southern Army Corps. Even that old-fashioned grandfather of mine didn't comment on that. How about you? YueZhengyu used his shoulder to nudge Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin smiled. You're rather boastful, huh? You must have been oppressed too much in the Southern Army Corps. YueZhengyu shrugged. I spend every day cultivating, doing nothing but else. Ever since Xiaoyan left, I didn't even have someone to talk to. How about Xie and Yuinen? When are they coming back? There's also Xinglan and Lishi. Aren't they here yet? I am not the first person, right? Tang Wulin said, what's wrong with becoming the first person to arrive? This shows that you're motivated and positive. They should be arriving within the next few days too. YueZhengyu was quiet all of a sudden. He exhaled a long breath after a few seconds had passed. It feels really good to reunite with everyone. Tang Wulin did not utter a word, but he used his shoulder to nudge YueZhengyu. Yes. It truly felt too good to reunite with his companions. Even though he was already leading the Blood Dragon unit by himself and had the support of Shrek Academy and Tang Sek now, no one could measure up to these companions that had always been with him for so many years. They were the true Shrek 7 monsters of today. Oh right, Zhengyu. Let me tell you some good news. You're already one of the Sea God Pavilion's elders now. You can now join the Sea God Pavilion's meetings. YueZhengyu was stunned for a moment, but his expression did not reveal any happiness. On the contrary, he bitterly smiled. Sea God Pavilion's elder? Are we granting these titles to ourselves? Yes. There's no one other than us. In order to give everyone a big surprise, Tang Wulin had not informed his companions about the news of so many people still being alive in Tang Sek during their conversation in Soul Communicator. YueZhengyu felt like he sounded a little too serious. He chuckled in turn. So, as the leader of the current generation's Shrek 7 monsters, are you supposed to be Sea God Pavilion's master then? Tang Wulin nodded. That's right. YueZhengyu smiled. Very well then, we shall join hands as brothers to raise the Sea God Pavilion. By raising Shrek, we can certainly rebuild the academy, right? That's for sure, Tang Wulin said forcefully. YueZhengyu lowered his voice and said, Big brother, are you going to grant me the position of Vice Pavilion Master? Since everyone is not back yet, you can grant the other position to Yuinen or Xinglan. There are usually 2 positions available for Vice Pavilion Master, right? Tang Wulin looked at him with a sly smile. He said, we shall discuss further during the Sea God Pavilion meeting. You should know that the Sea God Pavilion has always given priority to fairness and justice. We shall agree on the important affairs as a team. YueZhengyu shrugged. Can't you just pull some strings? It's only a few of us anyway. Oh right, there's also Her Excellency Holy Spirit Delor. Could it be that the grand old woman is reluctant to become the pavilion master? Has she not yet recovered from the pain of losing someone? Tang Wulin heaved a sigh. It's not that easy to recover. Her heart has already died. If not because of her concern for Shrek, I'm afraid that. YueZhengyu's expression turned dimmer too. Frankly, the task of rebuilding Shrek is truly very difficult. Before I departed, my grandfather talked to me regarding some affairs related to the political situation at the present. He is not optimistic about us at all. Tang Wulin was suddenly enlightened. I suppose the Southern Army Corps belongs to the Hawk faction, am I correct? YueZhengyu nodded. Southern Army Corps is relatively special because they are located further away from the rest of the Army Corps. Moreover, it is located on a richly endowed land. Generally, the Army Corps don't partake in political wars. However, my predecessor Yu clan was once the lineage of the Martial Soul Hall's Hall Master. In our clan precepts, there is enmity between us and the Star Luo Empire. Thus, the Southern Army Corps will certainly offer support if we are resorting to arms with it. Tang Wulin nodded. How about our efforts to rebuild Shrek then? Will the Southern Army Corps support us? YueZhengyu bitterly smiled. That's very difficult. Even though the truth hits you like bricks, I'll still have to speak it. Before I departed, my grandfather told me that both he and the Southern Army Corps would never support our efforts to rebuild Shrek. This is because it is possible that this will immensely affect our clan. Even though Tang Wulin had already figured that this would happen, he still felt rather disappointed in his heart. However, that's not for sure. My grandfather said that the Southern Army Corps wouldn't make things difficult for us when we're rebuilding Shrek. There are also two more possible situations in which he will give consideration to providing us with a certain amount of support. The first scenario is that we are capable of revealing our ability to resist the great forces during the process of rebuilding the academy. Under such circumstances, he'll consider providing support to a certain level. The other scenario is if I'm capable of becoming a full-word battle armor master. If that happens, then I'll become the successor to the next Southern Army Corps regimental commander. The army will certainly lean towards me to a certain level on behalf of respect. However, it's apparent that these two scenarios are not so easy to accomplish. Tang Wulin softly nodded upon listening to YueZhengyu's words. It was true that this was no easy task. Other than certain people gifted with special physical qualities, a soul master would generally have to cultivate to the hyper-dolor rank at the minimum in order to become a full-word battle armor master. However, it was inadequate for one to just become a hyper-dolor on most occasions. This was because in order to become a full-word battle armor master, one would need a divine craftsman's heavenly refinement. Hyper-doluos did not come in large numbers, but they were not considered too few as well. On the other hand, every heavenly refinement was very exhausting for even the divine craftsman Zhenhua. He would need to rest for a very long period of time after completing one set of full-word battle armor. Thus, it was already very rare for him to take on such a heavenly refinement mission. We'll somehow find a way. You still have me. Tang Wulin patted YueZhengyu's shoulder. YueZhengyu glanced at him with astonishment because he discovered that Tang Wulin's expression did not seem to have changed despite receiving such bad news. His eyes remained glimmering with spirit as if he was filled with confidence. Big brother, you seem to have grown even more confident after becoming the champion of Federal Star Do Battle Network Challenge this time. I must certainly praise you for that. Tang Wulin smiled. Confidence is derived from one's capability. This way, he pulled YueZhengyu while speaking and entered an alley by the side. After using his spiritual power to sense that there was no spy in the surroundings, he pulled YueZhengyu into a courtyard. YueZhengyu followed Tang Wulin as they entered Tang Sect's underground world, and he was astonished from the sight. This is... The extensive underground world startled YueZhengyu so much that he was left speechless. He watched the numerous workers bustling about and the mechas produced in the assembly line. YueZhengyu could not help swallowing a gulp of saliva. This belongs to the Tang sect? Asked YueZhengyu in astonishment. Tang Wulin nodded. And us too. Tang Wulin brought him outside a door. The door opened by itself without waiting for them to ring the bell. Lan Muzi had just walked out from the inside coincidentally. He smiled upon seeing Tang Wulin. He bowed and called out, "Pavilion Master." "Senior brother disciple Lan, there's no need to be overly courteous." Tang Wulin nodded toward him with a smile. He was now already capable of conducting himself with dignity after Long Yue's reminder. Soon, Lan Muzi saw YueZhengyu by Tang Wulin's side, who was staring in bewilderment with his mouth agape. "Junior brother disciple Zhengyu, it's been too long." YueZhengyu was already stuttering by now. Senior brother disciple Lan. You're still alive. You. Tang Wulin smiled and said, "Hey you surprised?" YueZhengyu had already walked forward in quick strides to size Lan Muzi up and down at close range. He was afraid that he had mistaken him for someone else. You're really not dead yet? Are you certain that you're not a ghost? Said YueZhengyu, gaping and speechless. Lan Muzi was at a loss as to whether he should laugh or cry. He said, "Do you really want me to be a ghost so badly? I'm still alive and well. Don't worry, all right?" Tang Wulin could not watch anymore. He apologized to Lan Muzi before he pulled YueZhengyu along as they entered the room. Inside, Long Yue and Wu Zhongkong were discussing the list of the first batch of students about to head to the Demon Island. Wu Zhongkong took the lead to stand up as he watched Tang Wulin enter the room, followed by Long Yue soon after. They bowed slightly and called out to Tang Wulin in unison, "Pavilion Master." YueZhengyu had not paid too much attention when Lan Muzi addressed Tang Wulin as Pavilion Master earlier. Now, however, he was completely stunned when he saw with his own eyes that Wu Zhongkong and Long Yue addressed Tang Wulin as such. "Elder Long, Teacher Wu." YueZhengyu was even more overwhelmed than Tang Wulin when he first met Wu Zhongkong. Even though he could tell what was coming when he met Lan Muzi earlier, he found that he could not control his emotions when he actually met Wu Zhongkong face to face. He had not followed Wu Zhongkong as a student like Tang Wulin, Xie and the rest had done, but it had been quite a few years since he studied under Wu Zhongkong. How could he control his emotions when he was reunited with Teacher Wu, a man he thought long since dead? Tears poured down almost instantaneously. He dashed his way to the front of Wu Zhongkong in one big stride and hugged him as he bawled aloud. Wu Zhongkong's usually icy cold face cracked into a smile once again. It was a reunion after a catastrophe. Even though he had Tang Wulin as precedent, he had just met YueZhengyu after so long. His lips were smiling, but his eyes had already reddened. He was smiling with tears in his eyes. "You don't know what you have until it's gone." Long Yue nodded at Tang Wulin, then she looked at YueZhengyu with a satisfied expression on her face. She was the light dark Dolor. Judging by her cultivation base, even the Atlas Dolor Yunming may not necessarily have been a worthy opponent for her. She had also mastered the control over the power of light, so she could naturally sense the almost tangible light element fluctuation emitting from YueZhengyu's body. It felt as if his entire person was formed from the light element. A person with the holy angel martial soul could become a soul sage upon attaining 7 rings. The further he elevated, the greater the change to his abilities. This was also the reason why YueZhengyu was so full of confidence. He had not only broken through to soul sage, but he had also completed the Holy Angel clan's harrowing second holy baptism. This was very rarely seen in the history of the Holy Angel clan, so how could he not feel excited? After a very long while and with great effort, YueZhengyu could finally control his emotions. When he raised his head to look toward Tang Wulin once again, his expression had already changed. He spoke ferociously. "You knew this from before. Why didn't you tell me?" Tang Wulin shrugged. "If I were to tell you earlier, would I still get to see you cry?" YueZhengyu looked at him, then looked at Wu Zhongkong once again. He soon found that he could not keep himself from smiling through the tears. "If crying could resurrect Teacher Wu, I'm willing to cry even 100 times. Even Tang Wulin's eyes reddened slightly upon listening to these words. Yes. If he could bring Teacher Wu back to life just by crying, he was willing to cry 100 times too. Tang Wulin explained to YueZhengyu what the current situation was at the academy. When YueZhengyu learned that Wu Sidwa, his other classmates and many of the inner court senior disciples were still alive, he was so excited that he simply could not contain himself. "Oh right, Teacher Wu and Elder Long YueZhengyu told me that he wished to." Tang Wulin was halfway through his sentence when YueZhengyu realized what he was about to say. He scurried over to his side and covered his mouth. "No, don't say it. Big brother, if you utter another word about that, I shall renounce our friendship," said YueZhengyu ferociously. Tang Wulin did not tell them about YueZhengyu's wish to become Vice Pavilion Master, but he could not help chuckling. "Coincidentally, I lack a sparring partner these days. You're back now and I can tell that you're very keen on continuing your elevation. Why don't we spar and also use it as an opportunity for Elder Long to guide us?" YueZhengyu looked at Tang Wulin anxiously and spoke. "I thought we agreed to spar 2 against 1 when Xiaoyan is back." Even though he was feeling very confident, He had also witnessed with his own eyes when Tang Wulin became the champion of the Federal Star Do Battle Network Challenge. He was not confident enough to the extent of assuming he could defeat Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin turned toward Long Yue and said, "YueZhengyu had a request earlier." He found his mouth covered once again. Furious, YueZhengyu spoke through clenched teeth, "All right. A spar it is then. I'll agree to that." Long Yue nodded and said, "That's fine." She had already learned from Wu Zhongkong about how Tang Wulin defeated his former teacher earlier on the premise that both of them would not use their battle armor. Thus, she spoke, "Zhengyu is allowed to use his two-word battle armor, but Wulin isn't allowed to use his own armor." YueZhengyu did not seem to be pleased by her words. He explained with a bitter expression, "Elder Long, my two-word battle armor has just been forged into the prototype of my three-word battle armor. I have been cultivating since then and have yet to find the time to make it into three-word armor. I can't use it at the moment." Before the group of 7 parted ways, Tang Wulin helped them to complete the foundation forging of their three-word battle armor. However, since then, everyone had been busy cultivating. The making of three-word battle armor was no easy task, so they would not attempt to complete it before they were certain of success. Now that Tang Wulin's soul forging skill had already elevated, he had informed them individual via soul communicator that they should not rush into making three-word battle armor. He would help them to improve their forged metals before they continued the process. As a result, the main mission for the Shrek 7 monsters upon their return this time was to complete the forging and making of their three-word battle armors. They were all already at a 7-ringed cultivation base which was enough to withstand three-word armor. After that, all of them would have an incredibly vast increase in their own abilities. Long Yue spoke, "I hope that you are pleased with depending on yourself then." The Tang sect's underground gymnasium was of a much higher standard compared to the shelter. The massive gymnasium was over 500 meters in diameter, which was even enough to hold mecha sparring matches. It was as good as any ordinary coliseum. Moreover, every protective implement was made to withstand battles between titled Duluos and greater, so three-word battle armor masters had no way of doing any real damage here. Tang Wulin's lips cracked into a faint smile. He turned to YueZhengyu with a friendly look in his eyes. As soon as YueZhengyu stepped into the gymnasium, his whole aura changed. He seemed to be a little fearful earlier, but when he arrived at this place, his gaze and his disposition seemed to have undergone a transformation that could overturn heaven and earth. Light shimmered in his eyes as if he was filled with the belief that he was undefeated. There was a soft, pulsating glow around him. Tang Wulin could clearly sense that there was a light element fluctuating around YueZhengyu's body so intense that it practically turned his body into a soul light bulb, its light faintly flashing. Both of them stood gazing at one another, 100 meters apart. Long Yue, Wu Zhongkong, and the numerous inner court disciples had all gathered outside to watch the battle. After Tang Wulin had suddenly become the Sea God's Pavilion Master of Shrek Academy, there were still quite a few people who were feeling rather rebellious amongst the inner court disciples, especially those who had a good relationship with Lan Muzi. In many people's opinion, Lan Muzi, who was already of title de law rank now, was even more qualified for this position than Tang Wulin. In fact, Lan Muzi's qualifications were no less than Wu Zhongkong's in the slightest. Judging by his cultivation base, he could even surpass Wu Zhongkong. He deserved to be the #1 candidate. Nevertheless, the Holy Spirit Doluo and the Light Dark Doluo chose the leader of the current generation's Shrek 7 monsters, Tang Wulin, who was only 21 years old, without any reservations. Lan Muzi was just over 30 years old this year and had reached his peak condition. Why had the Academy not chosen him? Why did it have to be Tang Wulin? Even for Lan Muzi, it was impossible for that thought not to have crossed his mind. He was well aware of how immensely stressful it would be to become the new generation Sea God's Pavilion Master. Nevertheless, after being the inner court's most senior disciple for so many years, he could not help but think about this. He would willingly accept this responsibility as well. Thus, when Elder Long gathered everyone to watch the battle, they all came without the slightest hesitation. Not even one person was left out. Even the Holy Spirit Doluo was there. She was attending because she was worried that someone might get injured in the process. On the other hand, with her presence, injuries were no longer an issue. The fighter's life could be saved as long as they were still breathing. Elder Long's voice echoed through the entire area, "Get ready. There are no rules in this battle. Fight until you can no longer continue." Tang Wulin glanced in Elder Long's direction. He understood that the reason Elder Long gathered everyone here was to allow him to establish his authority. The battle would not be considered an ordinary match. Begin. Soon after Long Yue's announcement, YueZhengyu's body underwent a transformation at once. 7 soul rings burst from underneath his feet like an explosion. It was even more surprising that all 7 of his soul rings were gold in color. Yes, they were all golden. Tang Wulin could tell that he was using the camouflage trick learned on the Demon Island so that the others could not tell the color of his soul rings. When his soul rings appeared, there was also a golden radiance that erupted like a solar flare. In a split second, YueZhengyu had turned a dazzling golden color. The incomparably thick light element made his entire form appear like a shining star. Such a powerful light element! The numerous inner court disciples were stunned upon witnessing this. Wu Sidhua and the rest had also been asked to attend as well. They were also inner court disciples and they would be cultivating here in preparation for their journey to the Demon Island. They could not keep their expressions from changing ever so slightly upon sensing the thick light element blooming from YueZhengyu's body. Even though he appeared to be of only a 7-ringed cultivation base, he was capable of unleashing such a powerful energy fluctuation without using his battle armor. How could a soul sage-ranked soul master achieve that? YueZhengyu was basking in a sea of light as he said to Tang Wulin, "Big brother, you're going to need to be careful. I'm different from what I was before." YueZhengyu moved as he spoke. He raised his hand and conjured a stream of golden radiance from the sky. Raining from above, it blasted into Tang Wulin. The holy light erupted in a split second. Tang Wulin had not even managed to see the fluctuation of the soul ring's radiance before he was struck by the holy light. At the same time, the glow on YueZhengyu's body was even more dazzling now. An enormous shining figure emerged behind his back. The figure was about 15 meters tall and emitted a golden brilliance. 12 feathered wings flapped gently behind its back. One could not see its face, but at the moment it manifested, YueZhengyu's entire body turned translucent. The crowd of onlookers could see clearly that he had immediately ignited his 7th soul ring, which was his martial soul avatar, the Holy Angel avatar. YueZhengyu and Tang Wulin had been companions for many years, so he had the best understanding of Tang Wulin's abilities. He knew very well just how terrifying Tang Wulin's outbursts could be. Thus, he chose to unleash his holy light as soon as he launched his first attack without reservation, not giving Tang Wulin a chance to use his powers to defeat him. Summoning the Holy Angel avatar resulted in 2 pairs of pure white feathered wings appearing on YueZhengyu's back. The feathered wings flapped, turning his entire body completely transparent. At first, Tang Wulin could not see YueZhengyu because he was enshrouded by the holy light's explosion. His senses had clearly been hindered by the thick light element. He was so affected by the light element that he could not sense the change in the energy around him. In other words, he was completely unaware that YueZhengyu had already unleashed his martial soul avatar. There was no doubt that YueZhengyu immediately took the upper hand as soon as he attacked. In addition, his usage of battle tactics was ingenious. Each of Shrek Academy's inner court students that were watching the battle was endowed with unsurpassed natural talents. They were all at least 2-word battle armor masters, yet they could not help nodding in approval upon witnessing the scene. YueZhengyu was capable of utilizing his skills to such perfection. Moreover, the power of his light energy was impressive after unleashing his martial soul avatar. It was truly shocking. In the next moment, they watched as YueZhengyu dashed toward Tang Wulin like a golden meteor. Meanwhile, the 12-winged angel light shadow that was behind him had appeared at Tang Wulin's back soundlessly. Judgment. A deep voice was heard echoing in the air. It felt as if the entire arena was frozen at this moment. At that point, YueZhengyu's 3rd soul ring was glowing on his body. It was his 3rd soul skill, the Light of Judgment. The holy light that was illuminating Tang Wulin's body had just begun to weaken when it turned into golden color in an instant. Even those on the outside of the sparring arena could feel its complete domination. Tang Wulin's body seemed to warp as he basked in the light of judgment. The light of judgment was incredibly powerful as the result of being amplified by the holy angel avatar's effect. It was a holy strike that was so overwhelming that Tang Wulin gave out a muffled grunt. On the outside of the arena, Long Yue could not help nodding upon witnessing the scene. Even though she was bestowed with twin martial souls and was dubbed the Light Dark Dragon Empress, she could control the two great martial souls, the Light Holy Dragon and the Dark Holy Dragon. She was still weaker than the Holy Angel martial soul in terms of the level of holiness in the light attribute. The Holy Angel martial soul was definitely the highest grade light attribute martial soul available. It was most effective when it was used against an evil soul master. Long Yue could already tell that YueZhengyu had completed his second holy baptism. Having such a holy aura would cause a lot of trouble when used to confront titled or low-ranked evil soul masters. Such a light of judgment was enough to eliminate even some higher-level evil soul masters. Moreover, this scenario was only applicable to when the soul master was not using his battle armor. Once YueZhengyu had his full set of three-word battle armor, there was no doubt that he would have his own holy attribute domain. By then, his holy light would only be even more terrifying. Tang Wulin's movement seemed to have become slower due to the effect of the light of judgment. At that point, YueZhengyu had already dashed over to his front. A golden saint sword had already condensed in his hand during the process of flying over. He swung it directly at Tang Wulin, who was surrounded by the light of judgment without the slightest hesitation. Tang Wulin's whole body seemed to have been locked down by the light of judgment. When his chest was struck by the saint sword, he immediately burst into golden holy flames as he was blasted away by the blow. It appeared that the sea god's pavilion master was rendered completely helpless. However, YueZhengyu did not think so. He appeared to have a deep grudge against Tang Wulin. As Tang Wulin was blasted away, the fourth soul ring on YueZhengyu's body glowed. The 12-winged angel that was unleashing the light of judgment behind Tang Wulin's back fused with him into a single figure, making him taller and larger. Besides the 4 pairs of golden feathered wings on his back, there was also a pair of wings of light. The saint sword in his hand condensed into a solid golden saint sword in a split second. YueZhengyu shouted aloud with his hands clenched around the sword hilt, "Cut!" A stream of golden color seemed to have manifested between heaven and earth. It felt as if the golden stream of light was about to cut open the entire world. The gold beam immediately went toward Tang Wulin. There was no other light element that was seeping outward at this point, but all the inner court disciples watched the battle in awe. Such a powerful attack! He was truly merciless. Meanwhile, Tang Wulin was finally undergoing some transformations of his own. The golden flames that burned around his body suddenly exploded and turned into countless sparkles that spread toward the surroundings. Soon enough, his new form came into view. Magnificent golden scales covered his entire body and he held a spear in his hand. The golden dragon spear appeared to be crystal clear and translucent in texture. After withstanding YueZhengyu's 3 attacks, he stood there as if nothing had happened. Tang Wulin's gaze appeared to be extremely solemn as he watched the arrival of the stream of gold light. A valiant dragon's roar came out from his body, and in the next moment, a pair of golden dragon wings flapped behind his back. He had only 1 pair, but his dragon wings were much larger than any of YueZhengyu's feathered wings. With a single flap of his wings, he immediately accelerated as if he was a stream of dazzling golden light. He welcomed the arrival of the golden beam face to face. The golden beam of light flashed and vanished immediately. It seemed like it had completely swept past Tang Wulin. However, a ghastly scene emerged. The portion of the golden beam that struck Tang Wulin was pushed up but not cut through by his body. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.